Meanwhile, here in our nation's capital, President Trump is set to focus on the renewal of the American dream in his address to a joint session of Congress for the first time in his second term.
And it's sure to be an historical moment for our president tonight. Senior congressional correspondent Chad Pergram joins us now from Capitol Hill. Good morning to you, Chad.
Good morning, guys. Well, you know, Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution says the president shall from time to time give Congress information on the State of the Union, but nowhere is it written down that they have to come to Capitol Hill and give a speech. A speech is not required. It was President Washington who gave the first speech in New York, and then it was Thomas Jefferson who discontinued that practice. He kind of viewed this as a little bit too much of a speech from the crown. So for 112 years, this report was written and handed in like homework to Congress. And it was President Woodrow Wilson in the early 20th century who revived this custom. And then we kind of got into media, and this is a big media affair tonight. It was President Calvin Coolidge in 1923 who was the first president to have his State of the Union address broadcast on the radio. Then you had Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who, of course, was the master of the radio. He was known for his fireside chats during the Great Depression and World War II, and so that was, part and parcel of his delivery of this speech. It first went on television in 1947 with Harry Truman, and then a big change in the mid-1960s. They had this thing called prime time, and it was Lyndon Baines Johnson, the president, who moved the speech to prime time in the evening. And if you look at a picture from that speech, it's about 5 minutes, 6 minutes after 9 o'clock in the evening. And then it was President Clinton who was the first president to stream the speech on the internet. Guys?
Or if they're working,
are plotting to spoil Trump's speech, and it wouldn't be the first time a presidential address in Congress has been interrupted, right?
That's right. Well, sometimes you have, some members of the minority party get up and yell and heckle. We're going to watch very closely what some of the Democrats are wearing. I'm told that some of the women will wear white because of suffrage. They might have Ukrainian flags. And some people don't remember the speech because you have these extracurriculars. It was in 1982 where President Reagan brought the first guest to one of these speeches, right, and that's become a custom. You had the Air Florida crash under the 14th Street Bridge, and there was a CBO employee by the name of Lenny Skutnik. And it was a freezing, ice-cold day in Washington, and he famously dove into the river and rescued one of the passengers. And it was President Reagan who, about 13, 14 days later, invited him and started this custom of always having people in the House chamber. There was a disruption. This was not a State of the Union address, but September of 2009, you had President Obama giving his Obamacare speech, and he was hectored by Joe Wilson, the Republican representative from South Carolina. Listen.
there are also those who claim that our reform efforts would ensure illegal immigrants. This, too, is false. The reforms I'm proposing would not apply to those who are here illegally. It's not true.
Now, Nancy Pelosi in 2020, she made some headlines when she famously ripped up President Trump's speech. He was going to be acquitted the next day in his Senate trial, the first Senate trial. And last year, Steve Nakui, he was removed over an outburst. His son Kareem was killed in Afghanistan during the withdrawal from Abbey Gate there. He was pulled out by the Secret Service and also the Capitol Police. He was charged, but those charges were later dropped. So sometimes we remember the other things that go on during these State of the Union speeches and not so much the content from the dais.
What a great historical perspective. And I love the fact, Chad, that you brought up that guy who helped fish one person out of the Potomac during the Reagan years, Lenny Skutnik. And in fact, 4 years after that first appearance where he was a guest of Ronald Reagan, they referred to that person as, okay, who's our Skutnik this time?
That's right. And he didn't have a guest the next year, but then it's become a tradition where you have the president, the Speaker of the House. In fact, I just reached out to the Speaker's office to see who they were going to bring in to the speech tonight. And sometimes it's a little bit like a West Side Story. It's kind of like the Sharks and the Jets, and everybody brings the people who are on their side to make their showing. And the Democrats this year, we're told, are going to be bringing a lot of fired or furloughed federal workers to protest DOGE.
Right. It's becoming a little bit, Chad, like the British, where they just yell at their prime minister and he gets up and sits down. Remember Laken Riley? Remember when Marjorie Taylor Greene said, say her name? He said Laken Riley, and he said Lincoln Riley. But that was also the give and take that kind of saved Joe Biden. He seemed to be tanking his speech, and that pepped him up again.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes that's the things that you can't predict about what's going to come out of a speech. You know, people remember they thought that President Biden last year, certainly after that point, it was a more energetic speech, especially if you contrast that with his debate performance in June, which pretty much tanked his presidential bid. But that's the importance of these speeches, because a lot of Americans don't tune in. They don't watch TV every day. They don't tune into the internet, but they watch this speech or they watch, clips that are played, and that's their dose of politics for the year.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Chad.
Chad.
There's an article in Axios, and the headline says, some Dems plot to disrupt Trump's speech to Congress. If you read the article, it says that some might walk out, bring in props like noisemakers and hand clappers, red cards, pocket constitutions, empty egg containers, and signs with anti-Trump, anti-Doge messages, even though there was a closed-door meeting yesterday on the House floor and lawmakers were discouraged from using props.
Well, I just don't understand how we're supposed to take them seriously. This is not a sporting event, even though I
New
understand.
Year's Eve,
right? It's like,
noisemakers.
what are you guys doing? And then to the egg point, I mean, have you seen the chart from the Secretary of Agriculture? Eggs have been going up way before Donald Trump. He's only been in office less than 2 months. And now you want to you didn't talk about eggs the entire presidential race. You wanted to talk about the threats to democracy and all that. And by the way, the Constitution, I mean, is real rich. You've been targeting your political opponents using the Department of Justice, and now you care about the Constitution.
Egg prices are high because of bird flu.
That's
obviously.
correct.
They leave that part out. But it sounds like in addition to them kind of poo-pooing the prop idea, it sounds like, according to the same Axios article that Ainsley was referring to, it sounds like some Democrats may, when the president starts talking about a particular issue, may stand up and walk out. For instance, when he starts talking about trans people like trans men in women's sports and things like that, they're going to get up and they're going to move out. And don't forget, it was not that long ago when Rashida Tlaib held up during a joint session of Congress a sign when Bibi Netanyahu was talking that said war criminals. So look for a sign. And I would imagine it could be something related to Doge, Brian.